Another day, another FPL vid. Jack, what are we going to talk about today?
Josh, today we're going to talk about whether it's possible to win FPL without making a single change to your team after game week one. So we'll
Big
talk
ask.
about whether you can win it, whether it's been done before, or even if you can even do well in it, relative to the active managers. Because it's a topic I think that comes up now and again every year of like, oh, here's a team that hasn't made a single change, and it's doing really well, or people use tools online to show their team if they hadn't made any transfers. So we'll go into a couple of those as well. And yeah, just see if we can draw any conclusions, see if we can learn anything from teams that are more passive, and whether we should adopt that mentality.
I like it. Flipping it. We generally talk about in the vids everything being active constantly, FPL every day.
Mm,
So is it possible to sit back and win?
yeah. It's just a funny thing, and it's just one of those funny. It's just funny when a guy or girl is playing, they don't care, they don't touch their team, and they just keep beating people. Like it's just one of those funny things in FPL, beating all the managers, stressing over it. So it's just one of the passive side of FPL is really funny, I think. Yeah.
Discuss. Let's
Let's
discuss.
discuss. Right. So what do we mean? What do we mean by that? So I think we described it. So if you set up your team game week one and then just lift your hands off the keyboard, leave it, let it do its thing. You ignore all transfers, all injuries, captaincy, you leave your captain. Um, is it possible to do well with one of those teams? Um, and initially, Josh, like we do in most vids, before we go into the research we've done, what's your gut feeling before you did the research on this?
Not a chance. Hell will freeze over before someone
Mm,
that passive wins. That's
yeah.
my initial thought, but this is why we discuss these things, because even if it's not true in its purest form, we're
Mm,
here to learn, right? We're here to take some things back through every day. So this
yeah.
is where you say, actually, Josh, it is
Mm.
possible and you should do it.
Well, yeah, we'll see. I'm the same as you, man. I will talk about the other vids we've done, but having done this with you for a while now, the conclusions that seem to be drawn, whatever topic we're on, is the more active, the better.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'd have been very surprised. Certainly, I was pretty certain no one's ever won it without touching it. But even top 100K without doing a thing, I'd be very surprised. Not even using a chip. Remember,
Mm.
if you're playing really pure kind of ghost ship level, and you won't even use a chip, so I'd be amazed if anyone has done it. But let's take a look. So the first thing I want to talk about is the what if machine. So full disclosure, I made this tool online in 2017. I published it, and it kind of took off, and it's still popular today. And it's just a tool that lets you add your team ID in, and it shows you what your score would be now if you never made a change. So I'll bring mine up now on a screen. So as we're sitting now, we're in the 2024 season. We're midway through game week
Yeah.
21, 20. And if I type mine in now, I'll bring it on screen now. So my current score in real life is 1,224. If I'd done nothing, I'd be on 879 points with that game week one team, which is a massive difference, isn't it? It's like 345 points difference thanks to my active management. And if I look at my team, I mean, I can see, to be honest, I think it's weird. It's quite good, really. You've got Haaland, Odegaard, who's been a letdown, Salah, Bruno Fernandes, Richarlison, Matoma, and then Gabriella Stupinian and Chilwell at the back. So that explains it, really. Um, and it's just funny, isn't it, looking back, because you see how much you sweat over your first, like the amount of the summer when the game launches, or I just think loads about it, like who am I going to pick? And invariably, it all
It
goes
changes so
up
quickly.
after 3 weeks. Yeah, man, exactly. Um, so initial research, it's our hypothesis is correct in that it's a bad one.
And I'm guessing you haven't even used any chips. I don't think you've used any chips yet either. But that's
No, well, I've
purely
wildcarded.
on players. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
but
Exactly.
there's a
But
lot of enhancement to come on top of that as well to make
exactly.
the
And there's a
distance even
massive
bigger.
difference. Yeah, and there's also a mini league version of this, so you can see if you've got a mini league, you can. And I'll put the screenshot up again. You can type in your league ID, and it will show you what everyone's in your league's what if ranking would be, and you can see who would have won your league if no one had made a change. And as you'll see with this screenshot, everyone in one of the leagues me and Josh are in are worse off if they'd left it. So again, that compounds the not compounds it again, reaffirms that being active is probably best. Probably best.
Would love it if someone in your mini league though would be better off. That would be punishment in
I
another
know you do
level.
see it sometimes. You
You're
do
better off not even playing.
you do see it sometimes, not sure. Um, but go on, go on.
There you go. That was it. Good with that. I love it.
Good. But if we flip it then, Josh, there are exceptions, I think, aren't there? What do you think are the exceptions to the active rule?
Yeah, we talked about this in a few other videos. So nice little plug of one of our old videos. Should you captain the same player every week in FPL? The answer was yes. You should captain what you consider to be probably the best player in the game, the Haalands, the Salahs, because more often than not, over the season, they will get you more points than if you flip between different captains trying to pick who may be a good differential, who may do better. So the passive side here wins, I think, with captaincy choice. The set and forget captain does work from what our research there. So that's a place where you can be less active, I think, proactive. You can sit back a bit.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
also, oh, sorry, do you want to
No,
comment
no,
on
no, keep going.
captaincy?
Keep going, man.
Happy with that one.
Keep going.
Yeah, refer to the video. Don't you discuss that one further. And the other one is premiums. We did another video talking about premiums are premiums for a reason. They, are the surefire bets to deliver when compared to all the other players. And people say, well, they cost so much, but then they do deliver consistently. And the other question people ask is, well, I can't fit them all into my team. Well, actually, we covered that, and you can. So get them in, keep them, and again, another set and forget with those big boys. Get them in.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm trying to figure out like why being passive and ghost shippy with your captain is good, but then on whole, you're doing it with your team isn't good. Maybe it's because the captain is always the best player to captain, but you just don't. It's just sexier to want to change it, even though that's not the right move. Whereas being active in your general team management, you will make better decisions. Like it's a clear decision, clearly a right decision if a player gets injured for 6 months to transfer him out of your team. But I think it's less clear that if Haaland has a game against Liverpool, but there's an alternative captaincy playing Sheffield United, you're tempted to go for that Sheffield United one, but actually the reality is Haaland still is a better captain. So that's why the passiveness works there, because actually it's always the right move to do it. Um, yeah, interesting one. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think as well, and this is when you look at template over the season and how the template switches and moves. The premiums are ever present, aren't they? Like they may drop out for a small amount of time if they're having a bit of a lull, but the Salah, the Haalands, the KDBs when he's fit, Son
Yeah.
when he's fit. When those players are fit, they're always there and scoring points over 5-10 game weeks. Like the kind of streaky players, we covers them every season, don't they? Like the Mbuemos in the past and people that do well for a hot streak of a certain amount of time. They're the ones where people bring them in too late and then get them out and then they streak again. And they're the ones that it's really hard to nail the right time to own them.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, the premium thing. Yeah, again, we've got the video on it. But we've just seen with KDB coming back, and this game of 20's been out all season. He comes back, comes off the bench and scores and assists. Like that's
Bangs
what a
it.
premium would do. So yeah, but being passive with them is can be good. Um, but again, on the flip side to it, there's an article from Give Me Sport, and again, you see these pop up at the end of seasons where someone figures out the best team you could have picked at game week one in terms of ranking. And I've seen ones in the past where they're like, if you'd picked this team, you would have won it. Like you would have just won the whole thing. Um, and this Give Me Sport, I think they found one that would have finished top 40 in the world last season. So in the 2023, the 22-23 season. And when you look at them, I'll put it on screen now. So I'll read it out to you, Josh, 'cause I know you can't see it now, and for people just listening. So you've got Allison in goal. This was last season. Allison in goal, Trippier, Cher, and me at the back. And then Martinelli, Odegaard, Saka, Rashford in the middle, and then Ivan Toney, Kane, and Haaland up front. And for me, when you hear that team, you're like, well, obviously, you're like, well, why didn't people have that team at the start of last season? Because that sounds like a great team. But if you think back to the start of that season, Martinelli, Odegaard, Rashford, Cher were on nobody's lips because they were Martinelli had done nothing at that point. Rashford had just had a horrible season, so he was like 6.5. Odegaard was kind of like still pretty unknown before that Arsenal title push season. And same with Saka, really, but maybe to a less degree. Fabian Schär, again, I feel like nobody talked about him until now because he had that great season. So it just shows, while it may seem obvious in hindsight to have picked that team, it's very, very hard to to do it ahead of a season.
Yeah, and it's always easy to look back retrospectively, not even at like just player pick, but even like results. Like just a single fixture is hard to call. Like all the fixtures in a certain game week are hard to call, let alone
Yeah.
this group of players that will do it over 38 game weeks, isn't it? So um yeah, you've got to just it's pure luck, I think, to get to pick that.
If you nailed that. And you
Right.
just nobody would have, like
No.
nobody would have picked that team because for those reasons I just said that Martinelli's nowhere. And again, that reaffirms that if you'd picked that team this season, you'd be having a shocker because
Yeah.
Martinelli, Odegaard, they're all letting you down. Rashford's having a stinker. Um, Ivan
Kane's
Toney's
not in here.
not alive. So you know what I mean? Kane's not
Yeah.
here. Exactly. So you would have at the start of last summer, if you could afford that team, you'd probably take it. But you'd be having a disaster season this year. So it just shows how I think what's underrated, or not underrated, but not really appreciated by people, including me, is just how in a state of flux it all is constantly. Like even month to month, in terms of like the players that are good, the players that should be picked. I think it's so transient constantly. Um, and it's kind of hard to mentally grasp how much of that is the case.
Yeah. And I think,
Um,
as you said, uh, everything seems really insightful when you look at it, when they're looking back, isn't it? Like in the moment, often when I'm sure if you looked at and gathered all of the comments and recommendations, there'd just be so many. Like you have no indication of where to look, no reliable indication of where to look for players that are going to bang for 5 game weeks or who's going to outscore. Like even the projected points, we've had this before with in the past with the comparisons of overperformers and underperformers on stats, isn't it? Like we talked about the Kane and King and Dennis, that Watford season. Like you don't know. You really don't know. You're picking a side and hoping that it works out. Is Dennis going to continue to overperform, or is King going to actually return on these stats and his XG? And it's like sometimes it works one way, sometimes it flips the other.
Yeah, you're right. There is a lot of luck when it comes down to an individual game or player. We talk about Dennis worms his way into every video, doesn't he? Good old Dennis.
Haven't recovered from that because I picked King. Haven't
King.
recovered from
We
that
were both
season.
kingers. We were
My
king
God.
lovers. Yeah, no, as we always say. there was one other example I wanted to pick. So FPL Focal, who's obviously massive on YouTube. I really like when there's an international break or a break with Focal because he actually puts out some interesting videos rather than just like who's the best captain this week. He'll do like a quirky video. And I think the first international break, so it was a few months ago this season, he did the work and found the highest ranked team that hadn't made any changes. And he found the guy ranked 126th in the world, and it was 4 months ago. So I reckon it would have been like game week, not that far in season, like game week 6 or 7, maybe. Um, and again, I'll put this on the screen, but you got Ramsdale, James, Stupinian, Saliba at the back, Bumo, Son, Soboslai, Madison, and Matoma, and then Ferguson and Haaland captain. And then a strong bench of Porro, John Stones, and Callum Wilson. So that team with no changes after 6, 7 game weeks was 125th in the world. And while that's impressive, if that guarantee if that team hasn't changed now, it's nowhere near that because you've got Madison, Matoma both injured. Soboslai's done nothing. Son
Mm.
and Mbuma have gone away with international duty. James got injured and never saw the light of day again. Stupinian injured. Ramsdale dropped. Uh, so it's just like it shows how precarious your team. Like if you leave your team for a month, I'd go as far to say you're screwed
Yeah,
at any point during the season. Like in terms of trying to get a good rank,
yeah. The
it's
light shines elsewhere that quickly, doesn't it?
it's
It's
that bad.
like,
Yeah, and it's weird, isn't it? Because like you only feel like you make tiny changes, like one transfer a week feels like nothing, but over a month, you might make 4 or 5, and that is a massive change to your team, isn't it? It's half your team has changed in a month. Um, so it shows how kind of important making a transfer is. Like we said in our other video of that showed how being active is statistically probability wise much better than doing nothing.
yeah. I mean, aptly named. Should you roll a transfer in FPL? And again, as you said, the answer is yes. So
Yeah,
you're moving. You're just constantly moving, aren't you? Your team is
yeah.
constantly shifting. And even then, sometimes it feels like you're way behind the curve. So it's just mad.
Yeah, and like I always bring up that one season I had 3 years ago where I mentally kind of went like half ghost ship. I was like, right, always roll a transfer, then make 2 transfers at the end of 2 weeks. And even doing that, I was way behind the curve, like way behind, like skipping a transfer each week just to have two to make the next week completely screwed me and I got an awful rank. Um, so even that, and that's not being passive, that's just being slightly less active than normal. And it just ruined me. I haven't recovered since,
Less
Josh.
scars, less,
Life,
less
life,
scars.
life is
You can see it in your eyes.
absolutely, yeah, awful year, but a good lesson, good learning. Um, so I mean, those were the 2 bits of research I did, Josh. So
Yeah,
that's that. Two
I think
examples.
telling. Both of them are telling.
Yeah, and we've talked about the other research we've done. I mean, yeah, I mean, the what if machine means you don't have to set up a people used to have 2 teams, one they'd leave and one they would be active with, didn't they, as like an
Mm.
experiment. But the what if machine means you don't need to do that now. But would you ever, I don't know what I'm going to ask you really, would you ever consider doing it? But what's the point?
No.
Uh,
Case closed.
there's
Yeah. But
there's
I think like the point of a lot of these questions is you think you know the answer, but as you dig to find the answer, you get gems, don't you? You get
Mhm.
gems that pop up. And I think
The gems.
I don't think there's anything particularly new or unexpected, but it just things that can reinforce all the other stuff we've talked about already.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, generally being active and generally making transfers, keeping up with the curve, putting out fires quickly,
yeah,
planning ahead, but also, you know, trying to live in the game week is the balance. And if you're going to be passive somewhere, then lean on your premiums and set and forget permacap, like
Mm,
kind of the big points that we've covered before, which are true when we're talking about this here now.
yeah. I'd say it's a bit like it's survivorship bias, isn't it? When you find these ad hoc examples of like the guy Focal found, or you look at the team that would have done it. Like it's like interviewing a lottery winner and asking them for tips on how they
So
did
of
it.
course, buy a ticket. Everyone should buy a ticket.
Everyone buys a ticket, you know.
Yeah,
Asking Bill Gates for, finance tips is stupid because he's the only one who got lucky enough to wheel his way up there. Like they're not gonna be relevant to you. I'm sorry,
just do what
but
I did. Cheers,
yeah,
Bill.
just do what Bill did. Easy.
Sick.
So yeah, I think it's tempting to say. So technically, the answer to the question is yes. Like you could get jammy enough in your picks, but as we've shown, you're very, very, very unlikely to pick the winning team at the start. You're just really unlikely. Like no one would have picked that Odegaard Martinelli team at the start of that season. Even the most ardent Arsenal fan wouldn't have done it. And it transpired they had an amazing season. So yeah, it's very unwise to ghost ship your team, is the conclusion.
Yeah. And if you want proof, use the what if machine at any point in the season, and more likely than not, you will be significantly better off. If
Exactly.
not, you should just log out, never log back in again. To be
Yeah,
honest,
use it with
no,
caution. Use it with caution.
you're sure.
Good. All right. That's that, I think, Josh.
Love it, love it. So yeah, we were right. Good.
Yeah, we're
That's
right.
not gone.
Very good.
Good,
Making
good.
videos to
Pat,
affirm our beliefs. Good.
pat on the back.
But no, thanks for watching. Have you ever done a ghost ship team? How did it do? What do you think? What are your thoughts? Are we wrong? Should you be more passive? Let us know what you think down below.
I'd love it if we found someone who was like top 100.
I'm number
I did
one.
it.
Yeah, doesn't count. Like we've already said, they don't count. If you find
Yeah,
one,
yeah,
they don't count.
yeah, true,
So
true.
nice try, comment guy. Good. Thanks for listening and leave a like if you liked it.
Please do. Thank you very much.
Ciao.
Ciao.